We are back, episode 187, and we are here with Cam Serigne from vQuip. Welcome, Cam, to the show. Did I get your last name right?
No one ever does.
Right.
It's Serigne. No one
Syringe?
ever does. Yeah, no, don't worry. It's been my whole life, so you don't have to worry about it.
Well,
It's-
what is the actual?
It's
It's,
Serenge.
It's Serenade. Serenade. Yeah.
Serenade.
Serenade. Yeah, the G
Serenade.
silent.
Serenade. Oh shit.
Tell you what, handsome, you can serenade me anytime.
No, that's all you, Kevin.
Well, we got a really great show today. As I said, I got Cam here. Cam's first time on the show, and Cam's been in our industry for a while, so we're glad to lock him down in an episode here. But before we get started, we got our announcements. As you guys know, every show we're going to hit you with the port. We are selling tickets. Actually, we just started selling a lot more tickets lately now that we're coming off the summer. But you can go to watersportpodcast.com to pick up a ticket to the port. That's October 20th and 21st in Destin, Florida, home base for Kevin and I. Our schedule will go live probably close to when this episode lives, if not the week after. So eye out, join our Facebook group definitely, or go to our website for updates. And our Port Awards, we had a lot of you nominate some of your friends and colleagues for the Port Awards, but we have 4 or 5 really great awards. So even if you want to nominate yourself, you can do that. So again, go to watersportpodcast.com or our Facebook group, and you can just click the form and nominate. And last but not least, we got to give a shout out to all of our sponsors that are going to be attending and exhibiting at the port, including Cam from vQuip here. So we got just a rundown of all these amazing sponsors. We got Von Mac, AutoTrack, Souvenir Photos, Tour Scale, AMP Agency, Uncharted Society, Conversion Assist, Thomas, Yonder, Tour Magic, Saltwater Marketing, Boat Fix, and ILM Watersports, which is double than we had last year, right, Kevin? I think that's like we've really filling it up.
Yeah, I'm super excited about the sponsors that we have this year. I think to Greg and I's credit a little bit, we've really put together an event that blends like education and the trade show aspect, and we've got a lot of cool products and services that are going to be on full display. We're in our largest space ever, so I think it's our best event to date by far, and it's just going to be awesome. All the activations and networking opportunities this provides for our attendees and sponsorships to really get their hands on the to get their hands and be able to touch the products and see them in real time happening on the water. Is just, I don't think there's anything else like it in the in our space, and hell, man, I'd even say in the event space. I think it's going to be amazing.
Awesome. All right, well, that brings us to our interview with Cam. Cam, before we get into talking about insurance and vQuip, let's talk about you. How did you get into this industry?
Yeah, no, it's I feel like sometimes you fall backwards, especially into insurance and then water sports specifically. I've been, in love with boats and the water my whole life, and been as a huge activity and passion. But originally I started off, I was a football player my whole life, right? So football was plan A, B, and C. Played for a while, played in college at Wake Forest, ended up in the NFL for a little bit of time until some injuries and other things derailed that, and kind of was left to figure out what was next. And I loved solving problems, and I got to, I started working and tried out finance and private equity, tried out a couple other things. And, at a time in 2021, I think I realized that there was an insurance crisis brewing in adventure sports, and have been dedicated to that ever since.
Hey, Cam, I'd like to roll it back just a couple years here. First, how old are you? You always look really young to me.
Now, yeah, I'm 32.
All right, so you are really young. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So, and it's funny when guys in their mid 40s would say that to me when I was 32. I didn't feel that way. I was like, I'm really young, dude. Sure. You know what I mean? But then you're like, oh God, So now when guys in their 50s and 60s, they're like, you're a young guy. I'm like, yeah, totally. I'm totally a young guy.
Yeah, exactly.
But so how old were you? So you played in the NFL.
Yeah, for a little bit. I took the journey, right? Football was, again, a huge part of my life. Had a really good college career at Wake Forest. got invited to some of the all-star games after college. You kind of prepare and play in front of scouts and different front offices, and ended up breaking my foot in the first practice of the East-West Shrine game. Had to get healed up, was able to get healed up before it took me out of the combine, ended up getting healed up before pro day. And then on the third step of my 40, I blew out my right calf.
Oh man.
And so, you get stuck in a spot where you have you just got hit up from a broken foot. You now have your right calf torn in half, and you're trying to, get drafted or fall into a team. I clearly fell out of the draft, ended up getting signed still to the Carolina Panthers, which was an awesome experience, right? It was the years of like Cam Newton and Greg Olsen, all those guys. And I was a tight end, so I got to be in the room with Greg for a little bit, and and just warriored through for about a year and a half, 2 years, chased it, right? Bouncing around, journeyman, never really sticking. But it was such it was obviously a disappointment for me, but it was a big formation phase of my life, right? Where you develop resiliency, you kind of set yourself up for what comes next.
Yeah, I mean, and you're like, what I mean? If you're like, were you like super just like in a really bad headspace for a while?
Oh man, it was hard. Anytime you have a dream that like you feel like you're right there, ready to just grab and go. And I had a really good college career, right? I was supposed to get drafted in the middle rounds, and next thing you know, you're on your couch a year and a half later with having to rethink of like, hey, this was plan A, B, and C for 25 years, right? And so it was I look back on it now and you're like, okay, it was humbling, but it was also, I wouldn't change anything, right? Because of where it's led me and how things have in life, things happen weird like that. So it's ended up being a really positive for me, but it was at the time, it was very hard to see, as you'd imagine.
Is Florida State the dirtiest team in the ACC?
I've got to play at the Doak. I've played at the Doak. It was it was a tough place to play, especially when I was there, because I was like on the tail of like Jameis Winston and all those guys. So it's definitely a tough place to play.
Mm.
So after your injury, you're sitting on the couch. You're probably assumably 24, something like that, 25. So obvious, still a really young guy. You're like, yep. Oh God, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And you're like, oh dude, you have so much time to figure that out, right?
That's right.
So what's your next move after that? So you said you went into you tried to get into private equity.
Yeah, you realize right at that point, okay, I'm 25, so I'm 3 years behind everybody else is what it feels like. So you start late, and as a young guy, you're like, okay, that's like, you feel disadvantaged. I went to Wake Forest, and luckily football was able to get me a great, degree. Got to go to college, get good networking, more important. And I was like ready to go charge the world, and like, a little bit of bitter over what just happened. I'm gonna go charge the world and do great things. And I realized, hey, you need to go build some skills first, right? You don't really have anything. You can catch a football, but you probably need to go learn how to how businesses work, all these other things. And so just took my medicine, I was number 51 of 51 at a really top end private equity firm in the city. And I just worked hard, right? I worked ridiculous hours. I grinded. I was, kind of took it from like, hey, I'm starting at the bottom of the totem pole, rebuilding my career, rebuilding myself, and, did that for about 4 years. And it really helped me kind of set myself up for what was next.
Yeah, I always feel like, and not all of them, obviously, everyone's journey is different, but ex-athletes, in the entrepreneurial space, and you have all these business influencers, and you sort of always hear this like anti-college like rant, right? Like, mm-hmm. Oh, college is so the ROI, you got the Gary V's out there shitting on college. But I think when you take like a smart guy and a hungry guy and you build up a pedigree, the routine of like you touched on it, like networking, all these type of things. And then the grit and grind of understanding like how much work it takes to make it as far as even college football, let alone into, NFL. It really builds up this sort of like this toolkit that I think most entrepreneurs or small business owners really don't necessarily have when they get into business and don't understand the level of action and execution it takes to be an entrepreneur. So, I mean, I think that's so you're in private equity. How do you make the move? How do you make the move from private equity to what's your next step after that? Is it right into insurance or?
Yeah, first, I completely agree with you. Like I credit a lot of like football teaches you how to live in adversity and take adversity and turn it into success or a new beginning. I think that was a big part of my story. But then in private equity, I wanted to build skills. I wanted to learn, right? Because you come into the thing where how do I work? And in that role, I worked with businesses, right, in the portfolio, and I worked with their management teams on all their problems. And my whole time was just solving problems. That's all we did, was solve problems for businesses. And I really enjoyed that. Like, that was something I was passionate about and loved it. But what I didn't love was sitting on the private equity side of the table. I realized, hey, I'm an operator at heart, right? I like to be in businesses. I don't want to be on the finance side. I want to immerse myself in problems and solve them. And I was always, again, I talked about it early on. I loved boating, loved being on the water, and I knew people kind of in the rental industry, but also I was kind of going around from one of my buddies one day, and he couldn't stop complaining about insurance. And I was like, how is insurance so hard for something like this? I was like, I just couldn't understand it at the time. And to make a long story short, I got obsessed with it. I basically was like, I'm going to go call every carrier, every connection I can find to understand why is insurance a problem for a water sports operator? Because it just didn't make sense to me at the time. And as you know, that was really where vQuip got born, was just from that problem solving exercise.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the formation of vQuip a little bit. So where are you guys based out of, and like what was year one look like? Because you guys done a lot of different things than we've seen in the insurance industry. You guys came onto my radar during SB 606. We can maybe get into that a little bit too. So
if y'all want,
I do kind of want to, and I would like to talk about that story a little bit too. But what's year one, year two, SB 606, like how you guys came in to the market when you did?
So day zero was what prompted vQuip's creation was, hey, this is a crisis. Everyone I talked to, I called all these different rental businesses, and everyone's like, yeah, insurance is like my number one problem. This is like 2021. Which is really the peak of like where it started to become really difficult. If you think about it, like I'm sure, Kevin, you started feeling a lot of pain right around there all the way through probably last year. And I went deep in how to solve the problem. It became pretty obvious to us early on is like, hey, there's two reasons why insurance is hard. One is they keep getting sued for business negligence, and that's makes sense. And two is, hey, their renters are uninsured, meaning that's causing them to sue the business more frequently, which is causing issues. So like we said, hey, carriers, let's just solve it by renter's insurance and safety technology. Well, the problem was every carrier was very skeptical. Nobody wanted to touch rentals with a 10-foot pole. They were all pulling out of the market. They're like, hey, sure, but like, we don't trust this yet. Like, it's in concept, it could work, but like, we're not really sure. So the first 2 years of the business was trying to work with the carriers to build their confidence. So like the whole, and the reason we had no insurance product, right? So we had to we built a booking platform, as Greg knows, there's no longer a thing because we needed some way to fund it.
Wait a minute. So hold on, don't gloss over that. So what did vQuip look like? What did your offer look like in year one?
So in year one, it had all the risk management focus that we have today, but it also had bookings and payments and all these other things because we needed a way to get the data and get the trust built with the carriers. And the only way we could get products put in place is through being our own booking system, which was a means to an end. And so it took us 2 years to build confidence. We talked to every carrier you can imagine to say, hey, this is an insurable risk. We look at the data. And it wasn't till like 2023 that we finally got that renter's insurance product launched. So it took us a while to build that faith.
So I remember when you guys launched, you guys were like, you had like booking, you're like a res tech. You also had like GPS, right? You guys had like,
that's right. We had everything. Yeah.
And like, talk about first year, you know what I mean? Or entrepreneurial mistake number one is like, we'll be everything to everyone.
100%. Well, it's like you're chasing, it's funny. You have this vision you're chasing. We had a very clear mission from day one, which was like, hey, we're here to solve the commercial insurance crisis for water sports operators, right? That was never changed. It's always been the thing. It's how you get there that was the challenge, right? Because now you're talking about, I have to convince all these different insurance carriers that what they thought was uninsurable essentially was a good risk to take based on our data. And how do you create data? You need to put in place technology. And so that was really a challenge. And like we definitely had our stumbles out of the blocks, right? Egg on our face, just things you learn as you kind of keep building. And the thing I kept telling our team is we need to stay as close to our customer base as possible. Hey, understand how the water sports operators, want this to work, because we serve two stakeholders, right? We serve the carriers because we can't create broader coverage and lower rates unless they're bought in. But then we also serve the water sports operators, because that's who at the end of the day we're trying to solve a problem for. And it creates a really interesting dynamic of like what you focus on, how you build. And I think we've had to continue, and that's 5 years ago we started this, right? So it's kind of crazy when you think about it, how far we've come since then.
Yeah, and I'll just make a point here. I was talking to Danny Pegg of Tybee Island Watersports. I think that Tybee Island, I believe the Tybee Island Watersports is the name. But Danny was telling me how when he first joined vQuip, he's like, the product worked, but it still needed a lot of polishing. And he said over time, the vQuip team really listened to what they needed and the industry needed. And now, flash forward 2-3 I forgot how long he's been using it for, but 2-3 years later, he's like, it's really starting to come into its own, like what the product really needs to work. And I think that's kind of my similar journey of WaveRes, like starting off with an MVP, and then, people are mad and then this doesn't work the same way. And then you get the feedback and you improve it. But it's really hard to do it. Like everything's moving so fast, industry, new insurance laws, AI and everything. It's hard to keep up with.
Before we get down to the current, let's talk about SB 606, because that's how you guys came onto my radar. And I know it was one of the first conversations that we had. And like when we first talked, I was just like, what part do you guys play in SB 606? And I liked your answer, and I trusted your answer, and I believed your answer. So let's talk about that. So where did SB 606 kind of come from? I mean, there was obviously people outside of government that they reached out to someone, they talked to people. So where did this all come from?
Yeah. So I'll give you our experience with it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. We started in 2021 and realized, hey, renter's insurance is a way we can unlock this market. We see it as the gap, the reason when we went building in our own little silo. We built our first renter's insurance product, which, by the way, the limit of our first renter's insurance product could go up to 100,000 per occurrence, 300,000 per accident, whatever it is, right? Aggregate. And then all of a sudden we get sent a newsletter about this thing called SB 606 that's requiring renters to have $1 million. And we started panicking because we're like, hey, this is not like $1 million at no fault insurance for renters is not a good thing for the industry. No. That is a very poor thing for the industry. And we tried to, and then at that point, that's our involvement in SB 606 was trying to convince folks to bring the limits down, because $1 million is just unsustainable for folks, in our opinion, right? It's too expensive, too prohibitive, cost prohibitive to do that where it makes sense for anybody. And it really, in my opinion, convoluted the value proposition of renter's insurance. It now became all about SB 606 and being forced to do things versus what renter's insurance was originally intended from our mind, which was to actually generate value for businesses by transferring risk off them and putting it where it belonged, which is on the renters. So it's been one of the more challenging things for us to deal with, if I'm being honest, as a business.
So Kim, you started your product before SB 606.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Way before. Yeah. We were working. The whole business was started on renter's insurance because it's almost, we used the auto industry as the proxy, right? Which was, hey, if I go rent a car from Enterprise, are they ever going to let me drive off the lot uninsured? No, they're going to make sure I have some sort of financial responsibility, because if I go and hurt somebody, they want to make sure it's on me, not them, right? Yeah. That's a simple concept that I think makes a lot of sense to folks. The whole idea of like, hey, no fault payments of up to $1 million on a renter, just not sustainable.
But and you can speak to this. So with in the car rental industry, though, like, I mean, everyone has their own personal insurance. Right. So there's another layer there, right? There's more money for obviously attorneys to go after, and this is where it becomes problematic in our industry. Is that like nobody has boaters insurance.
Coverage.
Nobody, I mean, half these guys who own boats don't even have that. No, not even close to $1 million in liability coverage.
If the only financial responsibility that exists is yours as the business, that's all that there is to go after, right? And so, and in boating, there just isn't, and that's what we saw as like a clear gap. And I think every carrier acknowledged the gap. They just weren't going to do anything about it, right? That was the idea.
Yeah. So, I mean, so this is even even today, this is what makes the whole thing such an expensive proposition, is that so we add like another layer, put it on the renter, but still that the cost of that to make it viable for the underwriter, for the agency, for everybody involved, is that regardless, it's still an expensive product. And now you guys, and we can talk about that, you guys have kind of solved for that with like a lower limit solution, right?
That's right. Yeah, we like our original intention was not to go offer $1 million to renters. It was to kind of mimic state minimum auto liability limits. Right. Hey, whatever I have to hold to drive a car is reasonable to assume that's what I need to hold to drive a boat, roughly. And so that's kind of been what we've aimed to drive the cost down, because, again, when we started our products, mission number one was, hey, let's get the insurance markets to understand that, hey, we can profitably, successfully underwrite this business, which will then generate broader coverage and lower rates for operators. And that was mission number one, which is why it was a challenging seat for us to be in. As you build technology, you build renter's insurance products, it could be viewed as adding friction to their process. We talk about it, Kevin, right? Slowing things down on dock, adding cost to the actual trip. It's a new experience that is challenging when you come from it from the carrier's perspective, because that's who we were optimizing for. As we've matured and gotten data back, that we have a ton of data that we now are able to work with the carriers on, they're now turning the knob back on what they're requiring to access these types of insurance products again. So as we go into 2026, I'm actually very optimistic. I think this is the best it's ever been from a commercial insurance market, because of all the work that's been going on over the past 5 years. Not just us, like you, right, Kevin, takemyboattest.com, right? Greg, Waveret, everyone in the industry that's focused on safety and bettering the industry from an operational perspective is generating a better future for insurance.
I do know that our county has reported less incidents, lower BOIs, but I think like naturally that would come down because boating just exploded in 21, 22. So I think it's a combination of just less people traveling and boating, and then also, education.
That's right.
Yeah. The other thing that I've heard and seen in the industry is like how light of a touch that it's actually being enforced. So like SB 606, I mean, and I can tell you that I feel like I could hand in a letter written in fucking crayon to the FWC and they'll be like, cool, man. You know what I mean? Like, because again, like I don't think that there's been any education on the state level down to the FWC to actually how to handle this, because you're not handing the FWC like a 90-page binder and they have somebody like going through it and going like, okay, yeah, they're actually doing. And unfortunately, what I feel like what this has also created is an opportunity for fraud. And fraud, and honestly, like I've heard about it. I can't say anything one way or another that it's happening, but there's probably fraud happening on the part of the operator, who's just handing them whatever or saying that, yeah, we have it. And then there's opportunity for fraud for, fraudulent carriers to spin up like risk retention groups. I'm not saying like that's 100% happening, but I feel like I've kind of heard a little bit about it where guys are going, yeah,
happening.
Right.
Yeah,
it's kind of
whenever people see, and this is a sad and good thing at the same time, right? Is people saw, hey, this is a hard market and there's more entrants now trying to come in, and some people have good intentions, which is like, hey, we're trying to help the outfitters and operators secure better rates, better coverage, and some people use it opportunistically, which is a shame. But
let's touch on the Cam. I'm an operator and I'm getting insurance quotes, and I just assume that everyone that I'm doing business with is legitimate. But what are like a few red flags when you are looking for, insurance?
What I would say is this. I think every operator needs to make sure they work with a retail agent that is a specialist and understands this space. Because at the end of the day, insurance is filled with, sometimes on purpose, complicated policy language, right? Where folks have a hard time understanding what's actually being written. And so you need to make sure you have a liaison between you that is a licensed, educated retail specialty broker, which we are not, by the way. We work with specialty brokers and we work with carriers. But there's a lot out there that serve the market well. And we have a network that we work closely with. And that's my number one advice, right? Because I hate to even say, like, look out for this specific, thing. but you need a broker that can help you read policy language to understand what's covered, what's not covered, what's the exclusions, is there sublimits on my policy, is my, what's covered, what's not, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think the real gap, and it's always right from industry to government to insurance, is that we still, as an industry, don't have like a set of like guidelines and rules and best practices. This is after all of this shit, it's still the same thing. Here's my letter written in crayon to FWC. Thank you for my livery permit. Now I'm going to drop my 2 jet skis in at a public ramp, and they're gonna fucking go crazy. You know what I mean? Like. There's no.
Yeah, look at the parasailing industry. The parasailing industry is just very well.
That's 100% right.
But it's not though. It's not.
It's not. I thought they have like all bunch of standards.
I mean, yeah, okay, absolutely, but none of it is enforced. Like I would write a $100,000 check to anyone that can tell me they've ever been issued a citation by the FWC for flying in high winds. Because wind is like a notoriously impossible thing to solve for. Like a 17 sustained, cool. Is that on the water? Is that 300 feet off the water? And that wind reading can change. It does change dramatically. And even like the one guy that's been charged with negligent under the homicide under the White Miskel Act. There was so much they had to do to prove negligence on his side, but it's just not enforced. So SB 606 is, I would argue, and don't get me wrong, I don't want my boats getting out there pulled out of the water and being like, here's your insurance binder. And the problem is just they can't, like, yeah, they have a set of rules and guidelines, but even in the absence of those rules, the enforcement of those rules, you still have deaths. And it's still not enforced at a lower level of go like, hey man, we're going to issue, it's 25 miles an hour. You're out here flying and we're going to issue a ticket. So it's not being enforced. So it's like we see with at the local level of our local regulations and ordinances, none of it is being enforced by the people who are actually breaking the rules. And until you actually have some type of enforcement before someone does get killed or before someone is breaking the rules, like somebody's got to get some little lower tickets here, to let people know that this isn't.
Because the standardization of operations is an incredibly important thing for the industry, right? Being able to say what's the baseline of something that's the way it should be done. Because once you have a baseline, now in a claim event or in litigation, you now have something to compare against. Hey, how did I perform on this trip against what they say the standardized, best practices are? And that's something we've built a lot of our business around, was like, hey, how can we standardize what we think are the best practices to go from booking online to leaving the dock? Now, the challenge is how do you make that realistic for business? Because at the same time, if I'm running a PWC operation, I got to turn my jet skis over every 15 minutes. I don't have time to do these things. And that's where you keep iterating to make what in a perfect world would be ideal to make realistic for businesses, that have to run the actual operation. Yeah.
Yeah. And I, again, so like, I don't want to come out swinging the bat on something like I did at you a few years ago. And like, I kind of like, I think even Greg and I, we never mentioned vQuip or talked about you guys directly, but we felt that you guys were like involved in the creation of SB 606. And obviously you weren't. You and I behind the scenes had a conversation. I was like, oh fuck, man. Internally, I was like, this vQuip company. And then I met you and talked, and I was like, man, I was so wrong about that.
I was like, man, what the heck? We're getting all the slack for this. I didn't even know. I was like,
we never said it on like as a matter of public record, just to be clear. But on the education side of me being a part of seeing laws coming through with, take my boat test, and then January 1st, 1988. It's like when you look at the data set of all of the accidents that happen in rentals, the one mitigating factor is always like lack of education or people not paying attention. These are like the biggest things. And we can't even get some type of standardization, not even at the local level or at the state level, but at national level of like, look, man, like at the base level, somebody should have some form of education other than 30 to 45 minutes of a quick rundown of dock. Even if it's a quick written test like we have in Florida and like we don't have in most of the other states in this country. In fact, they say like if you're running a day business or a day rental business or a livery or rental, whatever it is, you don't have to have education. So California is a great example of it. Everyone has to have education in the state of Florida if you own a boat, unless you're renting it. Like, how backwards is that?
It's nuts. Yeah. And I think, there's some undeniable truths about the industry, right? One, when we first came in, like the data that carriers would have said, and like, Coast Guard, is the incident frequency on a water sports business is between 1.3 and 2%, which means an incident statistically will occur 1 to 2 out of every 100 trips. Right. So no matter how good you are, something will happen. Yep. And so then you start reverse engineering back from that. What should I be doing to best prepare myself for when that incident does occur? And it's all the stuff you just talked about, Kevin, right? It's how am I better educating my customers? How am I better vetting who I'm letting operate my units? How am I making sure I'm documenting all the things I'm doing when that incident does occur, that I have something to stand on? Right. And I think that's a really important thing. And look, over the past 5 years, that's a data point we track very closely, which is like, what's the actual incident frequency across business? And we've seen some businesses have incident frequency around 50 basis points, so 0.5%, which is much better than the industry. And guess what? They deserve better coverage and better rates because of it. And so that's kind of been the trend that we're seeing, is getting rewarded for being a great operator.
Yeah, because and we'll go ahead and hard sell it right now because I have no problem with that. But I mean, basically what you're doing, and you can explain it better than I can, but you guys have like a couple different offerings for operators. And why don't we go over that a little bit and explain exactly what the model looks like for vQuip?
When we first came out, and I'll talk about the market broadly, because it's beyond us. We're not the only ones that have offerings in the market, right? But I think, when we first came out, it was very much a binary decision. It was like, hey, you got to use all this to get access to any of our commercial product or get access to any benefits, or you just can't have it, right? And that was difficult for operators because it's a lot to take on. It can add time and friction, et cetera. What we've worked on with our carrier partners, which we have multiple now that offer into this market, is how can we give options, let operators choose? Hey, do I want to make renter's insurance mandatory or optional? I should be able to make that choice. They can now. Do I want to only do waivers? Do I want to do the full tech, the operational system? Well, now I can choose and still get some benefit because we've been able to build that trust with our carrier partners. And so as it looks today, it's kind of like a choose your own adventure. Like, hey, I want something better than what's out there, but I don't have to opt into everything per se. And so that's been something that we've been very focused on. And I'll speak to the market more broadly is, look, the fact that we've been dedicated to trying to lower rates and broaden coverage in the industry over the past 5 years, even the folks we don't work with, they're now having to also bring better options to the market. So it's good. Competition is good for everybody, right? You want folks trying to drive better products in the market because it just creates, more availability, a broader appetite, which is good for everyone.
So Cam, it sounded like you first had like this insurance-minded approach to the beginning of vQuip, and now it's like risk mitigation tools, like a suite of risk mitigation tools, waivers, and the renter's insurance product, and checklist, things like that. So they really kind of evolved into like a complete risk mitigation. And we integrate with vQuip, and you integrate with some of the res techs. So if you're working with like WaveRes, you can use vQuip pretty easily. So
that's right.
Nice, Greg.
Yeah, that's been a huge one for us, right? It's like you got to make it easy.
There. Come on now.
Yeah, it's like you got to make it easy, right? And that's something like Greg and I talk about it a lot, right? With our relationship, WaveRes and vQuip. It's like, how do we make it easy as possible for outfitters or operators to achieve the insurance benefits that we can offer? And that comes down to making it where we honestly don't even want people to know we exist. We'd rather just be, as behind the scenes and least friction as possible. But at the same time, in order for us to generate the benefits, we have to build trust and visibility to our carrier partners, right? So it's being able to validate that waivers are getting completed, validating that there is a safety process going on. And over time, over the past 5 years, we've learned to do that, being less in the business and less restrictive, I guess, than we've had in the past, and gives more flexibility to operators.
So with that data and with the data sets that you touched on earlier, from I think you said it was like 1.3, 1.8 to, and you brought that down to 0.5. When you're explaining when you're explaining how vQuip works with operators, are you able to like highlight, using those numbers and using like a set of averages over the course of your business lifetime, you're going to experience let's just call it a 30% increase in reduction, or if you're seeing these 1.3 and you're putting this out, an operator of your size, like, can you really like drill down to those metrics and be like, and this at the end of the day, if people are purchasing renters coverage and we're doing lower limits, or we're offering the million or whatever it is in the state of Florida, like, you're going to save money over the lifetime because insurance is expensive. Additional renters coverage is, you have to build that into your model, even if it's being passed down to the customer. Right. So are you able to like go over that with operators and be able to show us a cost savings over the lifetime?
100%. That the whole, you wouldn't, like, again, like, we exist to broaden coverage and lower rates for operators, right? That's it. And so give you more access to insurance, but also try to bring your rates down if possible. And now, how we do it has been always the pinch point, right? It's okay. How I do it is by implementing the safety technology and risk management technology and implementing renter's insurance. And over time, some operators are like, look, I can't require renter's insurance on every trip. It'll make me uncompetitive in my market. Or, hey, I can't put this in all my operational workflows. I have to turn my jet ski over every 10 minutes. I don't have the time. We now have offerings for those type of folks where it's like, okay, you don't want to do that. You may not save 35%, but you'll save some. And you still have a more stable market that you're a part of, because this is about stability. Insurance has it's hard and soft market cycles. It's cyclical, right? And it's littered with corpses of underwriters who, made the mistake of trying to come in really cheap, but change nothing. And they're out a year later, right? And our whole thing is we want to be, hey, 20 years from now, we are the most stable, even keel program that's available.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, it's great, man. It's great to see your journey. I know from the first conversation we had, I was like, man, I like this guy. Either he's the best salesman and liar on the planet. He's a dirty salesman, insurance salesman. No, yeah, man. It's been great to watch your journey and watch you guys kind of like, make some changes to the industry and try and solve for something that's really difficult to solve for. I mean, between all the litigation and the local regulations and the state regulations to, trying to form a best practices or a baseline for it in an industry that's just very challenging to, create those standards and practices universally that work for everyone. It's a huge challenge, man. And I'm glad to see you guys keep on plugging away and creating a more compelling offer as, the changes and, you guys hear this stuff from the customers, you hear the stuff from your clients, and it's like, yeah, man, we're going to keep on changing until we make something that works really well. And yeah, man, I really hope to see your guys' continued success in that pursuit.
Yeah. And I appreciate vQuip and Cam and his team, like, dealing with all the curveballs and continuing to grind and find the right solution, even though like the industry can be just like vicious on, changing their processes and things like that. And like, I struggle with it on WaveRes, is trying to, deal with all the new regulations and AI and all these new technologies and trying to make it all work. It's difficult, but like, I'd say the ones that stick around and continue to build relationships and tell the operators like, hey, we're here and we're going to continue trying to figure this out until we find the right thing. And eventually we're going to. And so, but yeah,
that's right, man. I can't, echo that enough, which is a lot of the credit goes back to our early operator partners that have been with us for 5 years, right? That have gone through all the difficulties trying to put this together and believed in the vision, and they saw the better future that we could build together. So a lot of credit goes back to them, because look, we will never know how to run a water sports business better than someone that's in it every day.
Yep.
And the more we can listen to them and build with them, and we're still doing it to this day, right? We're trying to get better every single day. We've spent a lot of money trying to better our tools, better our processes and our systems. And it's an iterative everyday cycle. So look, we're very blessed and excited for what's to come. When we first started, it was like, less than 50 customers, and we're almost at 1,000 different businesses we work with, and across water sports, but now we're also doing stuff in land and snow. We do golf carts, side-by-sides, ATVs, snowmobiles. So excited to keep building solutions with guys like you and in the industry.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Like circling full right back to the beginning of the show. I mean, from, you know, being a startup in the insurance to, you know, a res tech to a small business owner who's running jet skis on the water. I mean, there's just days where you feel like you've been ousted from the NFL. You know what I mean? Like,
That's
oh
right.
my God, dude, like I've
Toughest
worked
days.
you're right. You know, how many days have you just sat there and been like, dude, I'm just going to fucking set this whole thing on fire and walk away. Hey, honestly,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
you're
it,
smart, articulate guy, you know, but you're no different from the rest of us that are
100%.
trying to build something and make something great and sinking your money and your time and your family and your fucking sanity. And you know, I'm really happy that you guys are continuing on the journey and doing well. And I honestly, I have a little bit of like regret, you know what I mean, about feeling a kind of way and
That's
being
all
like,
good.
oh, this guy,
Water
you
under
know,
the bridge.
and I'm glad to be that you're a part of our journey and that we're a part of your journey and that you continue to grow and thrive and prosper, dude. Because
100%. No, I appreciate that. And look, it takes a village to do what we all want to do, right? Is better the industry, you know, create more solutions. It takes everybody working together. So it's cool to see.
and get
Great.
stinking rich, dude, because that's what we're all about. We all want to get stinking rich.
If you solve enough problems for people, that takes care of itself, right? You solve enough problems. That's the focus.
Fucking 100%,
Hey,
man.
Cam, how can people get a hold of you if they have any questions or want to ask
Yeah.
about the show?
No, look, I'm a wide open. Look, send email. You can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram, whatever the different things are. But I'm available to talk. Our team is we're trying to be more involved in resource for folks as they try to navigate insurance markets, et cetera.
Great.
Yeah.
All right,
awesome.
everybody.
Jesus Christ, come on, man. You're fucking killing me here. Stepping on my toes, dude. And you will probably be able to meet him at the conference
I'll be there.
October 20th and 21st, the port in Destin, Florida. If you guys want to talk to Cam, you know, bitch at him about insurance, you know, he'll probably turn you around and make you a client. Yeah, he wants to have that conversation. 100%, man, 100%. So, Cam, thank you so much for your time. We will see you face to face in just a couple months here, brother.
We look forward to it, man. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah,
All
man.
right.
Thanks, bro.
As always, keep it awkward.
Yeah.